my family that I don't get a chance to see that often. Cousin Charles, my cousin Jamal, his mother Sherry. Also, especially want to thank my Tuskegee University, Marshall Crimson Bible family. You all can stand. Warwick, ready to suck in on that. I thought he wasn't going to make it this time.
Okay.
Also, I see my classmate Erica as well. Amen. Amen. If you have your Bibles, if you turn to the Old Testament book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah, the 2nd chapter. And once you found it, would you please stand? That's going to be Nehemiah, the 2nd chapter. Nehemiah, the 2nd chapter, we'll start at verse 1. When you have to say amen. Amen. And it came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was before him, that I took the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had never been sad in his presence before. Therefore the king said to me, why is your face sad, since you are not sick? This is nothing but sorrow of heart. So I became dreadfully afraid, and said to the king, may the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad, when the city, the place of my father's tomb, lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire? Then the king said to me, what do you request? So I prayed to God of heaven. I said to the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, I ask that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's tomb, that I may rebuild it. Then the king said to me, the queen also sitting beside him, how long will your journey be, and when will you return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set my time. Furthermore, I said to the king, if it pleases the king, let letters be given to me for the governors of that region beyond the river, that they must permit me to pass through till I come to Judah. And a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel, which pertains to the temple, for the city wall, for the house that I will occupy. And the king granted them to me according to the good hand of God upon me. Now I went to the governors in the region beyond the river and gave them the king's letters. Now the king had sent captains of the army with me. So about the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard of it. They were deeply disturbed that a man had come to seek the well-being of the children of Israel. And let us jump down to verse 16. And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I had done. I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, or the others who did the work. And I said to them, you see the distress that we are in. Our Jerusalem lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire. Come and let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach. And I told them of the hand of my God, which had been good upon me, and also the king's words that he had spoken to me. So they said, let us rise up and build. Then they set their hands to do this good work. But when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Justin the Arab heard of it, they laughed at us and despised us, and said, what is this thing that you are doing? Will you rebel against the king? So I answered them and said to them, the God of heaven himself will prosper us, therefore his servants will arise and build. But you have no heritage or right or memorial in Jerusalem. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
For my topic this morning, I would like to use the topic of it's time to build the wall. Before there was Jay-Z and Beyonce, before there was Chris Brown and Rihanna, before there was Bobby and Whitney, before there was T.I. and China, there was Ashford and Simpson. In 1984, the R&B duo Ashford and Simpson released a hit single entitled Solid as a Rock. Solid as a Rock describes a relationship in which the two had learned to forgive each other in spite of their mistakes and shortcomings. The couple tells us how they learned to trust one another and kept on building upon each other's trust until they ended up with a relationship that was solid as a rock. In our text today, we find a portion of the narrative of Nehemiah, a cupbearer to King Artaxerxes. We find Nehemiah feeling sad and depressed because Jerusalem and its people were no longer solid as a rock. The walls of Jerusalem had been broken down and its gates had been burned. Jerusalem was in a state of chaos and panic. Although Nehemiah is serving in a prestigious position as the king's cupbearer, he has not forgotten where he comes from. Nehemiah still remembers Jerusalem and its significance to his ancestors. Instead of abusing his position as cupbearer, Nehemiah decides to use his position to bless his people. Nehemiah goes to King Artaxerxes and asks for permission to go to Jerusalem to restore the wall and help the children of Israel. I believe that most of us can identify with Nehemiah. At various times, we have looked at our lives and society and realized that things were not as well as they once were. There have been times as students when the grades were lower than we expected, and it felt like the walls of life had come crashing down. There have been times when the performance evaluation on the job wasn't what you thought it should have been, and it felt like the walls had come crashing down. Well, there have been times when you were stuck in a dead-end job, and it felt like the walls had come crashing down. Amen. There have been times when your bills were due and your bank account was low, and it felt like the walls of life had come crashing down. Right. We've gone through the loss of loved ones, and it felt like the walls had come crashing down. Nehemiah decided he's not going to become content with his situation. He chooses not to be all right while his people are abused and misused. He doesn't find it acceptable for his people to live just any kind of lifestyle. Nehemiah makes up in his mind after much prayer and fasting that he's going to do something about his situation. Nehemiah doesn't just simply pray and hope that everything in Jerusalem will be all right. Instead, Nehemiah puts forth some works with his faith. Oftentimes we forget that faith without works is dead. Occasionally we want God to move in our lives without us ever having to do anything. God is willing to move in our lives when we do our part. Faith is a little bit like football. You can't play like Michael Vick or Roddy White if you're sitting at home on the sofa every day. Nehemiah determines that he's going to Jerusalem to rebuild the wall. He realizes that there will be some who will doubt him and call him crazy, but he goes on to build the wall anyway. We've got to become like Nehemiah this morning. We've got to realize that it's time to build the broken walls of our lives. It's time for us to build down the torn down walls of society. When parents don't see the need to discipline or correct their children, it's time to build the wall. When our students think it's cute to cuss out the teacher, it's time to build the wall. When our students come to school with $300 pair of beat headphones and no pencils or paper, it's time to build the wall. Teenage girls feel the need to sit in appropriate pictures in boys' affection, it's time to build the wall. When teenage boys see nothing wrong with posting inappropriate pictures of females to Instagram, it's time to build the wall. The Democrats and Republicans in Congress would rather see Americans furloughed than compromise. It's time to build the wall. When the media tears down individuals for taking a stand for the word of God, it's time to build the wall. When mothers and fathers have to bury their children because of senseless violence, it's time to build the wall. When the only concerns of our young black males are sex, greed, and basketball, it's time to build the wall. When blacks make up 44% of new HIV infections, it's time to build the wall. When both hip-hop music that devalues our race is promoted to young people, it's time to build the wall. Despite all that may be taking place in our lives and society, we have to build a wall. When times are at their worst, we still have to build a wall. I believe that there are several things that Nehemiah teaches us about building the wall. One of the first things that we can learn from Nehemiah is that we have to build with a sense of urgency. My first point this morning is build with a sense of urgency. At times we've all gone through life a little too nonchalant and unconcerned. At other times, we procrastinated and attempted to put off important matters until it was almost too late. Instead, we allowed ourselves to be caught up with minor issues when there were major issues that needed our attention. As teenagers and young adults, we often concern ourselves with things and people that will be of little value to us in the future. As students, you must remember that your education is your number one priority. As a student, you must take full advantage of every educational opportunity that you have been given. There will be some times you may not feel like there's any value in education, but you must press on. It's much easier to catch up earlier in the semester or the school year than it is to catch up at the end of the semester. You don't have to worry about pulling all-nighters or asking for extra credit at the end of the semester when you take care of your priorities early on. A teacher or a professor will be much more willing to assist you when you demonstrate your concerns early on. Many of our teens today are more concerned with Kik and Instagram than reading, writing, and arithmetic. Some of our high school girls are more concerned with the way that their hair looks than the way that their grades look. Some of our youth are too concerned with Big Lexi. Others are too worried about Nene. Contrary to popular belief, Big Lexi and Nene are not a part of the Georgia Performance Standards or graduation requirements. mother and father didn't send you to school to shake it like a red nose. After a few smart years, many of our concerns of today will not matter. During my middle school years at Bear Creek, Nautica, Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, and FUBU were among the top main brands that impressed our young minds at the time. FUBU was one of the brands that I was particularly impressed by. I remember wanting FUBU jeans, FUBU shirts, and FUBU jerseys with 05 embroidered across the front and back. I thank God for a mother and father that didn't go broke trying to give me everything that I wanted. My parents taught me that if I wanted certain items, I would have to pay for them with my own hard, legally earned money. Eventually, during Christmas of my 8th grade year, my Aunt Stephanie's gift to me was a FUBU jersey. I cherished that jersey and probably wore it only a few times. Eventually, that jersey was placed somewhere in the back of my closet. During my senior year at Creekside, I pulled that FUBU jersey out of my closet and wore it on a blast from the past or throwback Spirit Day event. This same jersey that I cherished and loved in the 8th grade had now become obsolete and unpopular within a period of less than 4 years. If I were to ask some high school and middle school students about the FUBU brand today, I'm sure most of them would look at me crazy. However, during my 8th grade year at Bear Creek, I took Algebra 1. The skills that I gained from Algebra 1 were still relevant when I took pre-calculus with Miss C during my senior year. See, fashion, entertainment, and technology change rapidly, but you have to make sure that you gain skills that will stand the test of time. Your ability to solve for X will still be relevant long after your true religion genes have faded. Your ability to read and write will be relevant when your iPhone 5C and Galaxy 4S have been deemed obsolete. Your critical thinking analysis skills will be relevant when Microsoft and Apple have introduced more advanced versions of tablets and computers. As Christians, we must remember that it is our goal to glorify Christ in all that we do. We have to remember the words of the hymn writer who said, "A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never dying soul to save, and fit for the sky. To serve this present age, my calling to fulfill. Obey all my powers engaged, do my master's will." Nehemiah also teaches us the importance of building with the right resources. My second point this morning is that you must build with the right resources. In verse 8 of the text, we find Nehemiah seeking the resources that he needs to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. In particular, Nehemiah is making arrangements to obtain timber that will be used to make beams. If I had a few architecture majors and construction science majors here, they would be able to tell you that beams play a critical role in the design and construction of any building. Am I right, Reggie? Am I right? Okay. So beams provide the support necessary to keep a building from collapsing. Beams must be able to support a building through the times of pressure and stress. As we build along life's journey, we have to make sure that we're using the right resources as beams. We have to make sure that we have the right people to support us during times of adversity. Verse 9 of the text tells us that the king sent a team of army captains and horsemen with Nehemiah to build the wall. Whether we're young or old, we must have the right team or support system around us. A lot of our young people often boast about having a team that's loyal. Later on, these same young people found out the hard way that their team wasn't so loyal. There are a lot of people behind prison bars this morning because they thought that they had people that were loyal. In times of trouble and conflict, many of the people who claim to be loyal to you will walk away free while you're sitting in ISS or a local jail. We must make sure that we're using the Word of God as our ultimate resource. During times of struggle, we may feel like we aren't equipped with enough strength to handle the task, but we have to remember the words of 2 Corinthians 12 and 9. In 2 Corinthians 12 and 9, Paul says, "And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon it." When times get rough, we've got to make sure that Jesus is our support. The third thing that Nehemiah teaches us is that we have to build in spite of obstacles and opposition. My third point this morning is build in spite of obstacles and opposition. In verse 10 of the text, we find that Sanballat and Tobiah are disturbed by the idea that Nehemiah is going to make the trip to Jerusalem to help the children of Israel. Verse 19 of the text tells us that when Nehemiah arrived in Jerusalem, that he encountered some haters and some doubters. A few days ago, there was a story in the news about a young boy whose teacher told him that this country did not need another black president, when he shared his aspirations and dreams. While we may not always agree with the stance that President Obama has taken on certain issues, I don't believe that it is ever appropriate to discourage a young person from doing anything positive. It is my belief that we should warn our children about the risks and obstacles that they may face as they strive to make their dreams a reality, but we should never kill their dreams. We must do everything that we can to nurture and support the dreams of our children. As you build through life, you will encounter some obstacles and opposition that you didn't create. Many of the situations and circumstances that you encounter will be things in which you have little control over. You may receive an unexpected email stating that your job assignment and location will be changing within the next week. You will encounter some situations that your high school and college textbooks didn't warn you about. There will be some times when you will be forced to deal with situations that you didn't see in an internship or field practicum. Despite your inexperience, you must work to overcome these obstacles. The world won't allow you to make excuses for your lack of experience. Instead, you must work to find solutions to your shortcomings. Some people, you have to understand that people may have a little sympathy for a short time when you encounter an obstacle, but eventually they will tell you to get over it and move on. After a while, the world will grow tired of hearing your excuses. The world longs for solutions and results, and not excuses. You may have been born to unmarried teenage parents, but you have to build anyway. Your mother or father may have died when you were young, but you have to build anyway. Your dress may be bankhead and not buckhead, but you got to build anyway. You might have been born black, but you got to build anyway. You might have been born a woman, but you got to build anyway. You might have potatoes and dollars in your life, but you got to build anyway. The gas tank might be on E, but you got to build anyway. Your friends may have walked off the vestry, but you got to build anyway. Everyone in your class might be acting a fool, but you got to build anyway. Your family might be dysfunctional, but you got to build anyway. You got to be willing to break the generational curses. You got to be willing to break the chains that hold you down this way.
Amen. Amen.
First, you got to build with a sense of urgency. Then you got to build with the right resources. Next, you got to build in spite of opposition and obstacles. And finally, you got to remember that God will be in the building process. So my last point this morning is God will be in the building process. In verse 20 of the text, Nehemiah speaks to his critics and says, "The God of heaven himself will prosper us. Therefore, we as servants will arise and build. But you have no heritage or right or memorial in Jerusalem." When God is in the building process, he will equip you with everything you need to build. When God is in the building process, he will make a way when you can't see a way. When God is in the building process, he's pulling the world against you. We've got to allow God to be the foreman in the building process. We've got to keep God in the building process. We've got to put our trust in God's only Son, Jesus. We've got to build with Jesus this morning. We've got to build with the one that laid the foundation of the earth. We've got to build with the stone that the builders rejected. We've got to build our hope on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. We've got to cannot trust anything less than Jesus' name. We've got to build on Christ, the solid rock this morning, because all other ground is sinking sand. We've got to build on to hold to God's unchanging hand. We've got to build our hope on things eternal. We've got to hold to God's unchanging hand. Aaron Chapel, it's time to build the wall.